professor walks into a TED Talk. That's not even a joke, and yet I imagine most of you at least chuckled at that, simply in anticipation of some sort of humor to follow. It's our first glimpse at the incredible power that humor and laughter possess, and of how deeply connected we are to the rhythm and idiom of comedy. But this isn't just a talk about laughter. This is a talk about the politics of laughter. I first hit upon the idea of studying the connection between politics and laughter when I attempted to build a republic out of Plato. Plato, you see, felt that laughter was a form of crudeness, something that less refined people indulged in. And so he argued that the leaders and protectors of his ideal city-state should not be inclined toward laughter. Laughter, it seems, could be the one thing that might destroy utopia. That's some serious power right there, but today I will argue that Plato got it wrong. Plato says you can't have an ideal polity with laughter. I say you can't have one without it. I want to focus my discussion on two questions. Who can tell a joke about whom, and who can laugh at whose jokes? To launch my discussion, I'll start safe with something trivial, something about which no one could possibly find any controversy, by which I mean, of course, the N-word. Is it really wrong for a person like me, in the middle of a talk about the politics of laughter, to say the word necrophilia? Wait. Was there some other N-word you thought I was going to say? Don't worry, I'm not actually going to say the N-word. But do take note that so great was your fear that I might do so, that you thought laughing at necrophilia was a perfectly acceptable thing to do. But let's turn now to the insight of the great Ricky Gervais, a comedian who delights in challenging boundaries, and who offers us this short but eloquent insight. Offense can never be given, only taken. If Ricky Gervais is right, and I think he is, then those who laugh and those who make us laugh are equal stakeholders in the politics of laughter, a role that gives us two things: absolute freedom and absolute responsibility. So what exactly links politics and laughter? Well, I just hinted at the incredible power that laughter and humor possess. And what is politics if not the continuous negotiation of the distribution of power? In many ways, politics and laughter are the proverbial twins separated at birth. One went on to serve the public in an effort to improve the lives of millions of people, and the other went into politics. Before I can answer these questions I've posed, we have to make a slight detour toward formal politics, most notably the law. Even in a democracy such as America, there are limits to free speech, sometimes with tragic consequences. You may remember that time years ago when hundreds of people perished as the Nightingale Theatre burnt to the ground. Why? Why? Asked so many anguished people in the aftermath of that senseless tragedy. Because, came the answer, as we all know, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's a bit of dark humor right there. There's a different kind of politics involved with dark humor. It's the politics of civil society. Civil society being the social glue that binds us together and helps us negotiate the unwritten rules of social propriety. You laughed at that joke. It's the absurdity that makes it work. But you didn't laugh too hard because it might show disrespect to the hypothetical victims of my hypothetical inferno. Our tempered laughter conforms to the unwritten rules of social propriety and thereby reinforces them, reassuring us that we are in good, by which I mean civil, company. I mean, if I told that joke and someone yelled out, "Oh, I know, I love it when people burn to death," we would all turn around with that quizzical look of, "Dude, seriously? What a psychopath," we would say. Speaking of psychopaths, Freud wrote a whole book on the joke and its relation to the subconscious. Freud differentiated humor, which is what the self-directed superego uses to reassure the ever-anxious ego, from jokes, the laughter of which represents the narcissistic pursuit of pleasure through other-directed aggression. Fun guy, that Freud. But he does at least give me a quick and ready answer to that ever-vexing question: If you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be? For me, it would be Freud. Not because I want to hear more about his ridiculous theories of humor and laughter, but just so I can relish the moment when I sit down across from him and say, "Hey Freud, did you hear the one about your mother?" But back to politics, and more specifically, back to the law. Yes, there are limits to free speech, but from my research on this topic, arguably the least restricted and therefore most protected form of speech, at least in the United States, is satire. It's as if the entire legal framework of the United States has recognized some deep, fundamental connection between laughter and democracy. That without our ability to satirize things, to use every weapon in a comic's arsenal to expose the idiocy and hypocrisy of others, especially of our public servants, democracy is somehow compromised, somehow broken. There's a reason for this. And the reason is that laughter, in its moment, confronts us with one of the most precious political concepts in the history of politics, namely equality. Drawing on what literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin referred to as the carnivalesque, in which social hierarchies are amusingly inverted in the celebration of Carnival, and on what Thomas Hobbes referred to as sudden glory, in which the crafter of a clever joke momentarily rises above their target, the laughter born of comedy offers us the chance, if only for a moment, to shine a bright light on the pervasiveness of injustice and inequality, and to dare to imagine a better world. Lest you think that the politics of laughter is a distinctly American thing, let me give you an example from someplace else, by which I mean, of course, North Korea. And yes, you heard that right. During a visit to North Korea, I was having dinner one evening with my official government minders. I asked them if North Koreans had a good sense of humor. "Of course we do," came the response. "We North Koreans love a good joke." And of course you do, I thought to myself, because let me be frank. When I think of laughter, I think of North Korea. They then proceeded to tell me a North Korean joke, a joke that, by the way, was an English language joke. Would you like to hear it? Well, of course you would. So, a general goes into a restaurant to have dinner. The waitress approaches him and asks, "Yes, General, what will you have?" The general replies, "First, I'm going to have tea, and then I'm going to have next to tea." So the waitress slaps him, storms off. That, my friends, is the end of that joke. At the time, I didn't know how to respond. I was lost. My minders, who by the way were very friendly, had their own bit of sudden glory with me, amused as they were by this American professor who couldn't understand what they saw as a simple English language joke. They then explained the joke to me. The tea in the joke, you see, is not the beverage tea, but the English letter T. And what letter is next to T? The letter U, as in you. So you see, there it is, North Korea. Come for the politics, stay for the laughter. But let me return to the two questions I posed earlier. Who can tell a joke about whom, and who can laugh at whose jokes? I've already talked about how laughter allows us to break through and tear down vertical boundaries, social and political hierarchies that effuse injustice. But what about horizontal boundaries? Shouldn't laughter allow us, indeed force us, to cross those boundaries as well? To engage with persons from communities other than our own? To build a better and more inclusive society? Can laughter be the potential antidote to the ever-divisive politics of identity? Those who make us laugh should not be constrained, for we cannot compromise their power to take us to places we might not otherwise go. And we who are taken to those unfamiliar, perhaps uncomfortable places, we have the responsibility not just to laugh, but to react, and more importantly, to reflect. Laughter has the power to transport us, and at the same time, transform us. If I am told there are jokes I cannot say, or there are jokes at which I cannot laugh, then what I am really being told is that there are places I cannot go, boundaries I cannot cross, people I cannot meet. It's a world of walls, and a world of walls is not a utopia, but a dystopia. When laughter exerts its power to break through the boundaries and walls between us, it transforms the divisive act of laughing at someone into the empowering act of laughing with them. You might be thinking at this point, so, Zook, are you really saying that when it comes to laughter, nothing is taboo? My response, as surprising as it may be, is quite the opposite. In laughter, I would argue, everything is taboo, and here's why. Taboo is a word that comes to us from the Pacific Islands, and it is a word that most of us misuse and misunderstand. We think it means forbidden or off limits. What it actually means is this: when something is taboo, it is considered to be imbued with so much power that only a person with the appropriate amount of knowledge and the appropriate amount of skill, a chief, for example, can manage and control the power of the taboo object. Politics, as I've already stated, is thoroughly imbued with power. Clearly enough power, I would argue, to make it taboo. So whom do we trust to manage and control that power? I, for one, wouldn't trust politicians to do so. No, the only source of power we have that can tame and control politics is in fact none other than the power of laughter. And that means that those among us with the right amount of knowledge and the right kind of skill to induce laughter, our comedians, are the ones we should turn to keep us safe in our moments of need and crisis. Comedians, in other words, are the chieftains, indeed the guardians, of our humanity. In the end, what am I saying? Laughter doesn't just break down the walls that prevent us from understanding one another, that obscure our vision of a better world. Laughter also makes us hunger for that better world. To build a better world is inherently a political project, and as I argue it, we can't get there without laughter. Will we ever get there? That I can't say. These are difficult and uncertain times. But what I can say is this: when the revolution does finally get here, it's going to be hysterical. Thanks very much. You've been a great audience. And don't forget, due to the pandemic, I'm here all week.